Hi, and welcome back to Reading Tea Leaves. I am John Ross, and this is where I take your stock and I run it through my brew of technical sentiment and macroeconomic tea leaves to let you know what I think of the stock and where I think it's headed. Now, today's stock is a biotech company, and it is in the middle of this race to develop a coronavirus vaccine. It's making news this week, and its stock price is moving. Now, today's tea is a Kenyan black tea with Indian masala. I'm excited to tell you about that. But before I get into those things, let me remind you, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, a like, dislike. Make sure you don't miss any of the content we publish to the Prosperity Research YouTube channel. Of course, drop us a question or a comment below, and definitely leave us a ticker symbol of a stock that we can run through the tea leaves to let you know what we're thinking of it. Now, today's stock, the biotech company, is Novavax Inc. And the stock gapped open by 17% today because it announced that it is entering into phase 1 of clinical trials for its vaccine. Investors loved that news. However, after that 17% gap higher, the stock retraced almost all of those gains by the time it closed the day, up maybe 3 or 4% from its previous close. So decent day, but not nearly as good as the way it started. And I have to ask, what's the reason for that sell-off? I tend to want to think that it is sort of maybe traders and investors getting a bit of fatigue about trying to pick a winner in this coronavirus race. Last week, we saw something similar happen at the beginning of the week when it was Moderna Inc. that gapped up, helped the stock market to gap open on Monday. However, after that optimism, on Monday, we saw the market fade over the course of the week. Perhaps we see something similar this week, and maybe this price action in Novavax is indicative of that. I do want to point out that, Novavax and Moderna are not the only ones in this race. We also have companies like Inovio, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and then Merck, which is a major drug manufacturer, is sort of getting in the game. They are taking a stake in an Australian company that's in the process of developing a vaccine as well. But today, amidst the news from Novavax, Merck has said that, listen, a lot of the developments are promising across the board, but this is going to be a long, slow process to get a vaccine that works and to get it to market. So again, maybe some fatigue here for traders and investors trying to pick the winner and also trying to sort of, get into a bullish move around optimism for overcoming and conquering this pandemic and this outbreak. Now, I wasn't asked to regurgitate the news on Novavax or any of these other biotech companies or drug makers. You want to know what the tea leaves say, so let's jump into this chart of Novavax. Now, of course, I've drawn in the 200-day moving average. It's the blue line that's running underneath those price bars. And I use the 200-day moving average just to get a sense of where price is trading relative to its longer-term trend. Now, looking at this chart, Novavax is trading way above its 200-day moving average. And that alone suggests to me that the stock might be a bit exhausted, and maybe some of the steam needs to come out of the stock price. We need to see a pullback closer to sort of what we've seen in this longer-term trend, in this 200-day moving average. Of course, that's not a precise timing indicator, so we want to look to some other clues as far as what type of decline we might see if we see one, time frames, and things of that nature. So, I do want to draw your attention to a gap. Now, I talked about gaps last week when I ran Enbridge through the tea leaves. And this gap here in Novavax, this is due to some news earlier in the month that CEPI, which is a coalition for epidemic prevention, it's a European coalition, and they are backed by nonprofit money. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is one of the backers of CEPI, and CEPI promised or pledged funds or gave funds to Novavax for the development of a coronavirus vaccine. That caused the stock price to shoot up by about 100% in a day and sort of led to the follow-through buying that took Novavax to its highs. Now, I think it's also should be said that Novavax is not the only recipient of these SEPI funds. Moderna is as well, Inovio is as well. So not necessarily a sole reason to be buying into this stock at current levels, but something to keep in mind as you think about it putting money into sort of this play on biotech stocks in the pursuit of a vaccine. So these gaps, they tend to get filled, but they don't always have to get filled. If we were to see this gap get filled, we would see something like a 50% decline in the price of Novavax. Now that doesn't have to happen in a straight line. It doesn't have to happen in just a couple days. Definitely doesn't have to happen the way or the speed at which the rally unfolded. But it is worth watching. It does give us levels to keep in mind as we think about the fact that gaps tend to get filled. So keeping that in mind, let's use another indicator to give us a sense of what type of decline we could see. I like to use retracement and extension levels. If we draw in a retracement of sort of this parabolic move we've seen unfold over the course of 2020, and that would give us three basic targets: 38% retracement, a 50% retracement, and a 61.8% retracement. Common Fibonacci numbers that just tend to attract prices when we see these moves unfold. Now, if we were to see a 38% retracement of the rally, then from current levels we would see something like a 23% decline in the stock. If we then move to our secondary target around a 50% retracement, that's a 36% decline in the stock from current levels. And of course, if we were to see a 61.8% retracement of the rally, that's a 50% decline from current levels. A big move, but as you'll note, if you look, that would essentially take the price of Novavax down to fill its gap, which happened at the same point where it broke above those highs that it established back in April. So kind of a confluence of levels here, which tend to create this big fat target on the back of this stock. Don't have to get there. Of course, the promise and the hype and the hope and the potential could help buoy this stock and just allow it to sort of gravitate around current levels till a new breakout, till new news, new developments on the front for developing a vaccine. But just want to give you kind of a sense of if we saw a decline, where it could take it. Now, right now, I'm gonna keep Novavax at a hold. I'm not going to recommend a buy or a sell. It is currently bullish as far as what the indicators are saying. However, I do want to point out one final indicator, and that's the indicator running across the bottom. This is my black and red indicator. I developed it for use in my Apex Profit alert service that uses my Apex Profit system. And it really is just a momentum indicator that helps me pinpoint inflection points in a stock price where turns can happen. And so as we see the bar indicator, this black and red indicator, move from red to black, it tends to, it creates a buy setup. If we see it move from black to red, it creates a sell setup. So right now we are firmly in the black. We're above that blue signal line where if we cross below it, it would indicate or signal an exit to a long position, and at which point we'd be looking for this indicator to turn from black to red and essentially giving us a sell setup. Now, we don't necessarily have to get a sell setup just because we're coming off of those spike highs, but it does the conditions sort of argue for a sell setup to come. So we want to watch this closely. That's what I'll be watching closely when it comes time to pinpoint trades, whether I'm trading in Novavax or other stocks. This is a hugely important indicator for my system, just to give you a sense of sort of where we are in Novavax and what could be ahead. So again, keep in mind this idea that maybe traders and investors are getting this sort of pandemic vaccine fatigue, and that could lead to a decline in a stock like Novavax. It is worth noting that Moderna lost a good amount, I think lost double digits on Tuesday when Novavax jumped up on the positive news for Novavax. So a lot of back and forth, a lot of jockeying here. So keep that all in mind when you're trying to put some money and shift some money around between different stocks. All right, enough about that stock, enough about biotech. Let's move into today's tea. It is the Kenyan black tea with Indian masala. It's very much a basic black tea in that it just sort of has the typical antioxidants you'll find in a black tea. It is grown at relatively higher altitudes in Kenya, which to some suggest it has more antioxidant levels than kind of a comparable black tea. However, it's the masala that really changes the profile of this tea. Number one, the flavor. It really adds a very rich flavor. Now, if you're familiar with Indian masala, then you probably know that it's used in a lot of cooking recipes and things. And it's really just a combination of finely ground spices to add to just bring flavor to a dish. However, when you're using it in a tea, the spices tend to be a little bit different as far as the spices that are chosen and used. Generally, you have some combination of cardamom, cinnamon, clove, ginger, maybe a few other things, but that sort of is kind of common in what is called a masala chai, which is essentially just kind of an Indian black tea that has these spices mixed in. Now, this Kenyan black tea with the masala, it's not quite in the same category as a chai, so these spices aren't overpowering. In some of the chais I've had, these spices are first and foremost the flavor that you're going to have in drinking the tea. And this one is very much the tea first, and then the smooth, creamy richness of the spices that are added. So really cool. I found this when I was driving through St. Augustine, Florida, stopped to try to find a cup of tea. There's this fair trade cafe. I figured they have coffee, they might have tea. They have one kind of coffee, one kind of tea. They brought it in from Kenya where it was grown and produced. And I lucked out. They had added the masala, obviously, but really a rich tea. I brought home a whole bunch of it. And just I've been excited to share this with people. Now, I'm not a huge fan of black teas, but again, this is really just in a league of its own. The masala really adds a nice element, which I imagine would be nice in milk if that's your thing. I've never put milk in my tea on purpose, but hey, you might like that. So anyway, Kenyan black tea with Indian masala, thumbs up. So anyway, I'll cut it now. If you like what you saw here in Reading Tea Leaves, hit the subscribe, hit the like, the notification bell, let us know what you think. And until next time, drink up and we'll talk soon.